Hello, my name's Edwina Archer and I'm the funding lead for Active Derbyshire and Active Notts, and this is a short introduction to Sport England's Community Asset Fund. Community Asset Fund's a capital funding programme that's open to a wide range of not-for-profit organisations, including sports clubs, constituted community groups, right through to the statutory sector, including the education sector. Awards are between £1,000 up to £150,000, and there are no deadlines. You can apply at any time. The decision-making process is regular, so you should expect to hear within 2 or 3 months of making your application, and the application is relatively short and simple. However, I really do stress the importance of making sure that you include enough information that will allow the grant assessor to clearly understand your project and the need for your project. It's a two-stage process, so the first stage is this application form. At the second stage, if you're successful, Sport England will ask for more information. However, at this first stage, there is no requirement to submit any supporting information. However, there is the opportunity to upload videos or photographs, and I would strongly recommend that you do that, particularly those pictures that could help you evidence need for your project. So, for example, if you have a changing room facility that's not fit for purpose, make sure you take pictures and upload those pictures that evidence why it's not fit for purpose. The programme's not just for sports clubs or sports projects, so if you've got a project that's getting people more physically active, then Sport England will be interested. Through this programme, Sport England want to improve and protect existing sports facilities, but they also want to invest in new and different places, so therefore funding organisations which haven't accessed their funding before. And as a result of this, they're wanting to reach out to different audiences and more hard to reach groups. And ultimately, through this fund, they're wanting to create a more resilient, sustainable, less grant dependent sports sector. Grants are between £1,000 up to £150,000. Awards of up to £15,000 will be for smaller scale projects, typically emergency type works. Medium scale awards are between £15,000 up to £50,000, would usually be for upgrade type projects, development of newer existing facilities. And larger scale awards of between £50,000 up to £150,000 would be for projects that can demonstrate considerable impact or be targeting underrepresented groups. Also, probably the applicant organisation won't have received Sport England funding before. It's useful to have a look at some of the expenditure that the fund can't support. So, for example, it's unable to support revenue-only costs. It also can't support wear and tear. So, for example, if you've got a changing room facility that requires a lick of paint and some tiling replacing, unfortunately this fund can't support that type of expenditure. It also can't support playgrounds or equipment, so movable equipment, or football-only projects. So, if you've got a football project, then I would recommend that you have a look at the Football Foundation's website. Also, it can't support small-scale cricket projects. So annually the ECB does a funding programme, so expenditure that would be covered through that ECB programme wouldn't be covered by this programme. The statutory sector and education sector can apply to this fund. However, there is a requirement for at least pound for pound match funding. There isn't this requirement from other organisations such as sports clubs, constituted community groups. However, it is desirable and strongly recommended that you do try and secure or at least seek some additional match funding. The strategic need for the project needs to be proportional to the scale of the investment requested, and also awards over £100,000 are the exception to the norm. It's worth spending a minute or two looking at the application form and process for this fund. There's a dedicated application portal on Sport England's website for the Community Asset Fund, so you'll need to register with that, and then once registered you'll be able to log in and save your work as you go along. Additional to the usual sort of questions that you see in application forms for funding, which ask for the information about the applicant organisation, there are 4 key questions in this particular form, which the assessors will use to get an understanding about your project and to assess and see whether it's a project that they would like to see further information for, and then possibly look to fund. So the first question is asking you to tell them about the project, so it's describing the project, and you've got 250 words to do that. The other 3 sections you've got 500 words, and so the next section is about the need for the project. The third section is about who will benefit, so the people involved in your project and will be supported through this project, and how the project will happen, so how it will be delivered. The first question, which you've got 250 words to complete, asks you to describe your project. So describe the existing space, what needs changing, and I would also recommend that you upload photographs to show what is wrong and what needs changing. This is really good in terms of evidencing the need for your project, but also providing the assessor with a clearer picture about what your project is about. The second main question asks about how you know that there's a need for your project, and you've got up to 500 words to complete this section. Now, I strongly recommend that you include as many different sources of information that can help you evidence the need for your project. So, for example, you could start this section by detailing what's wrong, what needs changing, what needs to be fixed, and then go on to detail information about how you've consulted with the potential beneficiaries of the project. Now, I strongly recommend that you do undertake some sort of consultation exercise with the potential beneficiaries. Probably the best way to do that is through surveys. So for example, you could use an online platform such as SurveyMonkey, but equally you could use paper copies. Whichever way you use, just make sure you capture the key information that shows that there's a need for your project and include that within your application form. You could also ask for letters of support from other stakeholder organisations. So for example, if your work project is involving young people, you could get a letter of support from the local school, or if your local authority or national governing body, if your sports organisation is supportive of your project, you could refer to that in your application as well. So unfortunately you can't upload these letters of support, but if you've got useful information that's coming through from those letters of support and the fact that you've got these letters of support, just make sure that you refer to those within your application form. You could also include information regarding gaps in provision. So if your project is filling a gap so that within your local area there isn't sports activities, or there isn't this particular sport activity or physical activity, then include that within your application as well. Also, if your organisation has waiting lists to do the particular sport or physical activity, detail that as well. You could also include local statistics that can help evidence the need for the project. Now, there's a really useful insight tool on Sport England's website. So if you Google Sport England Local Insight Tool, it should get you through to the relevant page on Sport England's website. Have a bit of a play with it. You'll just need the postcode for where your project is going to be located or is located, and then you can drill down into all sorts of data statistics. So on there's census data, there's active lives data, there's indices of deprivation. Whichever's the most relevant and most useful in terms of evidencing your need for your project, include that here in this section of the application form. Also, if your project links in with local strategies or regional strategies or with your national governing body strategy, also include that as well. The third question asks about who will benefit from your project, and this slide shows the priority groups, Sport England's current priority groups at the moment. The number one priority group for Sport England is people that are on lower incomes. So if you've got a project that's for people on lower incomes, but also is working with people that are inactive to try to get them more active, then this will be of particular interest to Sport England. But Sport England are also interested in projects that are for people with disabilities, children and young people, women and girls, or black and minority ethnic groups. So you don't have to be working with all these groups of people, but if your project is working with one or more of these groups, this will be of interest to Sport England. The fourth and final main question on the application form is about how your project will happen. Now, I would strongly recommend, in order to complete this part of the application form, is to complete a project plan first. Unfortunately, you won't be able to upload that project plan with your application form. However, I think it's a useful process to go through because it will help you think about the various stages of the project and help inform how you complete this section of the application. But in short, basically you need to include information about what needs to happen, what resources you need to make the project happen, when it will happen, the time frame basically from the very beginning of the project right the way through to the very end, who will be involved in making it happen, so the people at your organisation and their skills in order to be able to make the project happen, what will result from the project, and any risks. Now, I think it's useful to think about the risks involved with your project. I think Sport England would expect to see that there would be risks, and they would also be expecting to see how you've thought about how you would mitigate against those risks. If your application is successful at the first stage of the process, Sport England will get back to you to ask for more information about your project. They'll also be interested in the governance arrangements for your organisation. So, for example, if your organisation is a not-for-profit sports organisation, they'll ask to see a copy of your constitution. They'll also be interested in the financial management of your organisation, so they'll want to see, for example, the latest accounts, as well as information regarding the organisation's bank account. They'll also be interested in whether the organisation owns or leases the land or buildings that will be involved in the project, and they will also ask for example, policies around safeguarding if your project is involving children. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this presentation useful. We've uploaded other funding presentations onto the Active Notts, Active Derbyshire websites, which detail other funding opportunities. We also do a regular funding e-newsletter, which is sent out usually on a monthly basis, as well as a funding news feed on both websites, which detail the most up-to-date funding opportunities, not just for sports organisations, but also for organisations that want to deliver projects involving sport or physical activity.